capacity.
Although COVID-19 infections are slowly declining, Solante warns that ICU occupancy is still reaching the 70 to 90% level, mostly because of severe cases.
We are just appealing to the people to be responsible.
The Octa Research Group noted the lowest reproduction rate for COVID-19 in Metro Manila, but medical frontliners are cautioning the public against easing health protocols. Is the NCR and the rest of the country ready for lower alert levels? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. I'm Robbie Alampay, and with me online, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Ami's joining us from the Philippine Star offices. Good evening, Ami. Ano bang headlines? Anong headlines bukas?
Well, yung minors, di ba? Pinayagan na nga ng mga mayors, kaya lang kailangan daw lahat accompanied by adults. Tapos medyo maganda yung numbers natin ngayon. For the first time, bumaba ng below 5,000 yung cases.
Oh, we have to
diba?
we have to stress Tuesdays, 'di ba? Parang trend talaga sa Tuesday 'yan. It's always the lowest during the week, but even notwithstanding that, it is still notable. Notable pa rin, mababa pa rin.
On the other hand, sabi naman ng mga Hospitals Association, di ba, sabi nila, tuloy-tuloy daw yung exodus ng healthcare workers. Past 3 weeks nagkakaproblema sila.
Kaya nga bottom line, sabi nila ever since we went to alert level 3, antay pa rin tayo, steady lang, please stay safe kasi hindi pa rin natin alam kung ano mangyayari, kung ano magiging effect. In the meantime, yun nabanggit mo, ang dami pa rin confusion, di ba? Parang nakakakaba pa rin lumabas kasi even the malls, even the private establishments don't seem to really know kung ano talaga yung rules for everyone, including seniors. Nabanggit mo yung mga bata, pati mga seniors.
Yan na nga. Kaya, and in the meantime, siyempre, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung pagbantay natin sa politics. No?
Mamaya isa pa nakakalito yan. And every day, sinusubukan nating linawin. Maybe we get some more insights from our first guest tonight. Mamaya, we will be talking about the COVID situation, but we begin tonight with politics with Congressman Rodante Marcoleta. He is running for senator under the PDP Laban Kusi faction slate. Good evening, Congressman Marcoleta.
Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Ami. Is Lucy there and Ed?
Wala po si Lucy ngayon at saka si Ed. It's just Ami and myself and you. And if you don't mind po, parang we'll dive into it. Before we get into your own candidacy, we want to talk about PDP Laban Kusi faction muna. Una, kumustahin natin yung partido, yung katatayuan nyo sa COMELEC and also your slate. Kasi alam nyo naman, hanggang November 15, everybody's waiting kung mayroon pang magbabago. Sa tingin nyo po ba, can you say na ito na yun, kung sino nakikita nyo tumatakbo, yan na mga tumatakbo beyond November 15?
I hope I can provide you a better answer, Robbie, Ami, because, the truth of the matter is I was only adopted as one of the senatorial candidates in the Kusi faction of PDP Laban. So I am not privy to the dynamics and the higher-ups. So I cannot provide you with certainty as to how it will be the final form or how it will become as to developments, as to whether there will be substitution or not.
Congressman, ano po ba exactly ibig sabihin ng adopted candidate? Kasi medyo nalilito din kami, maraming yung ibang parties ganun din eh. There are common candidates across several parties. Ano bang ibig sabihin nun? For example, susuportahan ba kayo by way of funding? Sasama ba kayo sa kampanya ng party? And are you bound to support the standard bearer of the party? Halimbawa, at this point, it's Senator Bato.
First of all, I'd like to explain my peculiarity, the situation of my candidacy. Kasi alam niyo naman ako sa party list system ako. And under the party list system, there is a specific law. This is Republic Act 7941. if a particular representative under the party list system changes his affiliation, his political affiliation, necessarily maalis siya, mapoprofit niya yung seat niya per law. So, nung malaman ng PDP laban that I cannot do that without forfeiting my seat, they understood na i-adapt ka na lang namin as member ng slate namin. Wala naman silang nakitang legal impediment kasi Ami and Robbie. So, that's how it is. Yun ang status ng aking affiliation with them.
Okay. So, linawin ko lang po yun. That means you get to run not under, but with the PDP laban. And at the same time, you don't have to give up your party list seat. Ganun po ba?
Yes, that will be the case. Kasi ang term po hanggang January 30, 2022. Ang peculiarity kasi under the party list system, hindi kagaya ng iba na wala sa party list. Let's say, nasa district ka, pwede kang mag-take out under a particular party without forfeiting your seat as a district representative. But that's a different matter when it comes to the party list system. There is a specific law that applies to us.
Pero susuportahan nga kayo ng PDP laban, party list.
That is the commitment, Ami, because sabi naman nila, I hope we can encourage you, sabi niya, to run with us. Siyempre, from practical standpoint, Ami, sabi ko, hindi naman ako masyadong sanay, and I think even the wherewithal is not really on our side. So, if you can also support us in terms of the mobilization aspect of this campaign, considering that we share some advocacies, then so be it. That was the answer.
In any case po, ito na po, tumatakbo na po kayo, nabanggit nyo nga po yung advocacy. Sir, why run for the Senate? Why, and what's the difference do you think that you can make in the upper house compared to what you've experienced in the lower chamber?
Siguro, I would say that I'd like to also experience how it is done in the upper chamber. In the lower chamber kasi, Robbie, as you will know, sa dami namin, mahigit kaming 300. The dynamics, when you shepherd the bill, for example, ang daming dadaanan talaga in terms of committees and the processes that will go into it. Talagang napakahirap. And considering that we are in the party list system, kung minsan, we find commonality with our counterparts in the district. So kung minsan nakikita ko na the struggle is too much because by the sheer number and the dynamics that has to be, I would say, you will have to be under the dynamics of that system para lamang mapabilis yung, kunyari, it is a bill or resolution. I will try my luck in the upper chamber considering that, as you can see, probably you will be able to assert more of those things or advocacies that you would like to apply, considering that you are only 24 in the upper chamber.
Ano nga po yung advocacies na yon? If you could
ako kasi yung in our party list system, ang aming advocacy is central to our sector that we represent, the urban poor. Kung makikita mo from the beginning, I used to run under the Alagad party list. Ganon din ang sector na kinabibilangan ko. And then nung magpalit ako ng party list, this is the second party list. We did not change our representation. It is always the urban poor sector. Kasi hindi ko naman kinakaila, dito naman ako talaga nanggaling. And I hope I should be able to do something for this sector.
Congressman, kahit kukunti yung seats up for grabs sa Senate, nakita na naman natin ngayon yung lineup ng mga tumatakbo at medyo marami-rami po yung mga tao with high name recall, no, na makakalaban nyo. Hindi ba, anong magiging, kung sakasakali, ano yung i-emphasize nyo para magkaroon din kayo, makahabol naman kayo dun sa contest na yan. Medyo matindi yung labanan sa Senate eh.
Thank you for that question, Ami. That's a very important question. Ang naiisip ko kasi, I will focus more on the oversight function of Congress, more particularly the upper chamber. Napakarami nating magagandang batas sa Robbie, no? Katulad halimbawa, yung EPIRA natin, ano? Magandang batas yan, pero alam mo, there are several provisions there na sana natugunan ng mga regulators natin para bumaba na yung kuryente. Hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit hanggang ngayon yung aggregation aspect niyan at saka yung energy resale system na ito lamang ang gagawin para mapababa ang kuryente, including the renewables. Hindi talaga nagagawa niyan. And then ang gusto ko mai-contribute dito, for example, yung Presidential Decree 1445, if you will recall, this is the State Audit Code of the Philippines. Matagal na ito, panahon pa ni President Marcos, I believe this was enacted in 1978. Kung mapapansin mo, ang default system ng COA is always post-audit. If we are really serious in being able to at least do something about corruption in this country, ito yung hindi napansin mismo eh. Pagpalagay na lang natin itong ongoing Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing now. Kung tutuusin, ang dapat na gawin lamang dito, baguhin natin, i-amend natin yung PD 1445 para sa ganun, under Section 33 ng rule na yan, sinasabi riyan yung prevention of irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, and unconscionable expenditures. Ang nakikita ko, Robbie, ito yung, kasi ang COA, ito yung nasa forefront. They are the ones, they're the sentinels guarding the public funds. Pero ang nangyayari, as you will know, year in and year out, magaling silang gumawa ng report. There's no question about that. Matutukoy nila kung gaano yung naging anomaly, gaano yung corruption, paano nangyari sa transaction ng government in all agencies of government. Pero nawawala yung aspeto ng prevention. The new constitution, which was ratified in 1987, already categorically mentioned about prevention also of this irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, and unconscionable expenditure. Sana makapag-focus tayo ng oversight dito, Robbie. Ang dami, maski na yung tinatawag natin sa agriculture, yung Agricultural Modernization Act. Napakaganda ng batas na yun. Ang batas na yun, Robbie, sinasabi niya doon, mag-dedicate tayo ng mga lupa na mapagtatamnan. Hindi na nasusunod yun. Nandiyan yung subdivision, merong golf course na biglang tatayo, kung ano-anong mga pasilidad, pero wala nang nadededicate. Hindi kagaya sa Israel. Sa Israel, kapag dedicated yung lupa na yun for agriculture, maybe siguro dahil konti ang lupa nila siguro, talagang hindi nila gagalawin yun. It is purely dedicated on that. So dapat tingnan natin, Republic Act 7279, ito yung UDHA. Ang ganda ng mga batas, pero when you go into the implementation, talagang hindi talaga.
Hey, Congressman, I think naintindihan ko naman po yung sinasabi niyo at maganda naman. I think a lot of people will agree with that. Ang dami-dami nating batas sa implementation tayo nagkakagulo-gulo. But what I want to understand is how would you define the power and the limits of oversight of Congress? Kasi very often din naman sa kabilang banda, people look at these congressional hearings, whether at the House or the Senate, and they're saying, parang nanghihimasok, iba na to, hindi na to oversight, parang nanghihimasok na sa executive yung mga legislators. I mean, where do you think it should end, the oversight functions, beyond, suggesting better legislation para next time, alam nating mas maayos ang palakad at walang nakakalusot. But, oversight itself, how do you see it? How far should it go?
Again, that's a very important question. I'm surprised that you are raising very, very good questions. Yung oversight function kasi, Robbie, if you will note, this is covered by Section 22 of Article 6 of our Constitution. Ito actually yung tinatawag nating question hour. In the rules of the Senate, this is section 125. Sa rules ng House, this is section 126. Ito yung dito yung oversight function talaga. Dito nire-revisa, dito nila ini-investigate, ini-evaluate, ina-assess paano ang pagpapatupad or implementation ng mga batas na pinanukala at nagawa ng Congress. Yun namang Section 21, Article 6 of the Constitution, ito yung in aid of legislation. Kung mapapansin mo, kaya nga yung ina-advocate ko sa ginagawa ng Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, it's not under Section 21. It's under Section 22. Yun ang purely oversight. If you're under purely oversight, it is not mandatory for the cabinet officials to appear before the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee kasi this was decided already by the Supreme Court. But if you are invoking Section 21, which is in aid of legislation, ang sabi naman ng Korte Suprema, that's okay, mandatory, they will appear. But provided you will have to already indicate the legislative purpose. Meaning to say, before you undertake these congressional hearings in aid of legislation, dapat malinaw na yung batas na iniisip mo na gawin because you're already crafting this and you are already needing some materials to strengthen the bill that you are trying to enact. Iyon yung distinction ng dalawa, Robby.
Opo. We will get to that and meron din po ako mga tanong doon. But I asked this because I remember the episode with ABS-CBN, the franchise naman, di ba? And pumasok din po dyan yung oversight, particularly sa usapin na Congress called on all of these regulatory agencies, NTC, BIR, SEC, lahat. And each one of them was asked, may linabag bang batas? Meron bang rules na violate ang ABS-CBN? Every single one of the regulatory agencies said, under our laws, wala. They were compliant with everything. But to make a long story short, it seemed as if Congress, invoking oversight, said, no, that's not good enough. You have not been implementing things good enough. And we're left with the situation, yes, that Congress has the power, but people are left wondering, wait, where was Congress power supposed to end there when all the regulatory agencies said that hindi, wala namang linabag na batas and they were compliant with everything?
No, first of all, the extension or the application for the renewal of the franchise of ABS-CBN was not done because of the oversight function. This was because the franchise has to be
renewed.
Has to be examined.
Yeah.
Because it is supposed to be the work of the Franchise and Legislative Committee of the lower house. Ngayon, yung nagsabi na mga agencies na walang nilabag, I think you're referring to the agencies that appeared before the Senate of the Philippines. Parang na-preempt na kami because bago pa namin mapag-usapan yung application ng renewal, the Senate of the Philippines already undertook a particular inquiry where they invited several agencies of government. Of course, those invited initially told the senators na wala ngang paglabag. But that was those particular answers were changed. Nung kami na yung nagtanong sa kanila, napalabas namin, and they qualified that they said that walang paglabag because they were only mentioning several documents. In the final analysis, they admitted that ABS-CBN, there were limitations in the documents that they issued. So lumabas, for example, the BIR, sabi niya, nung naglagay kami ng, let's say, document na walang paglabag dito, we were only mentioning, sabi niya, a specific, meron siyang lugar na sinabi. Sa mga tweet, nung pagbabayad na ng buwis, hindi niya ngayon sinabi na at tinayuan na yung kanilang binayad na buwis ay yung totoo. Sabi niya, we will examine again. Sabi ng yun na pangako nila. Even the immigration, even the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, the NTC also admitted that several violations were committed by ABS-CBN. More particularly, yung kanilang mismong franchise, which is a free-to-air, pero bumili sila ng black box, ibinenta nila yung programs, that is directly against their own franchise. Wala silang karapatan pa nung magpalabas ng yung tinatawag nating pay-per-view Because at that time, Robbie, wala pa yung conditional access system rules ng NTC. So, but despite the fact na wala pang regulations, inunahan nila because they argue na mas mabilis ang technology kesa sa batas. Totoo naman yun eh. Hindi makaagapay yung mga batas kasi alam mo naman ang paggawa ng batas, napakamabagal ng proseso ng paggawa ng batas, but technology, isang araw lang, mapapalitan ng technology. But you cannot argue along that point. So, there is this history. The lower house presented I think, I would say, an avalanche of evidence that will prove the multiple violations of ABS-CBN.
Congressman, desisyon na niya yan eh. But you are closely associated with the shutdown of ABS-CBN. And ngayon na binabanggit din yan dun sa award ng Nobel Peace Prize kay Maria Ressa. They are citing that as an example of suppression of press freedom in the Philippines. Ano po yung masasabi niyo dyan? At saka, are you not worried that it might affect your candidacy for a national position?
I believe even during the time that this issue was deliberated in Congress last year, na-take up namin that this is not an issue of press freedom. Nagkataon lang na ABS-CBN is also one of the, in fact, it is the biggest communication network in this country. Pero yung mismong franchise is not an issue of press freedom. Pinaliwanag din namin doon, marami rin kaming hindi in-approve na franchise AMI, several of them. And hindi sila nag-complain because alam nila there were deficiencies also. And they promised to correct all the deficiencies and then reapply. So kung halimbawa yung pagdi-disapprove namin ng franchise is always connected with the let's say press freedom, sabi namin maaring ang gagawin na namin doon parang ministerial na lang. Pagka pinag-uusapan franchise, wala kaming karapatan na mag-disapprove, puro approval because it has something to do with press freedom. But that is not the case. We were not considering the issue of press freedom, but only the special privilege granted by the state, whether or not the applicant is still deserving because of the laws that they violated.
But will you consider, sir, yung proposal and yung thinking ng ibang tao, not just here in the Philippines but all over the world, that there should be a decoupling of franchise, of granting of legislative bodies having to grant franchises to media companies, because it does give a cloud of politics hanging over. I'm not talking about this particular episode with ABS-CBN. We're referring to the situation na matagal na, di ba? That kailangan magdaan sa Kongreso, and let's face it, these are politicians. These are different people who will look at it in different ways. But at the end of the day, you are subjecting a very crucial sector of society, media, that does need a lot of guarantees of freedom and reassurances. Pagkatapos kailangan magdaan sa congressional franchise. Will you consider the argument on that side where people say na, para maiwasan na yung mga ganyan and to ensure the free expression and press freedom guaranteed in our Constitution, maybe we should look at how to take away that system and allow media to just operate as along with its free press.
There is a valid and practical consideration in that argument, Roby. Okay lang yun. The only problem here is we cannot do away still with the constitutional provision.
Yes.
Nandun kasi sa legislative provision ng Congress na talagang mag-uumpisa siya sa lower house.
Yeah.
So we cannot do away with that. But there is a practical issue there. Mukhang maganda naman yun para lang mawala yung partisan, for example, partisan aspect na halimbawa mapolitika pa yan. Okay ako doon sa argument na yon, but we need to make adjustment. We need to amend the constitutional provision in that regard.
Yeah pa.
Congressman, we're out of time. Pahabol ko lang at magse-segue na rin kami sa COVID.
Yes,
nabanggit niyo po yung sa yung sa RITM, yung sa Subic na 40 COVID test na na nag-false positive. Pero sabi ng RITM, okay naman daw. Okay daw yung resulta. What's your comment on that?
Yun kasi nung I was about to wind up my interpellation to the Secretary of DOH, si Secretary Duque. Biglang may nag-text, pakitanong naman po ninyo, sabi na kung na-receive ng DOH yung formal complaint ng group namin because we tested negative, sabi niya gano'n, after one day na kami na-test ng positive in one of the branches of Philippine Red Cross in Subic. So the guy was only asking whether the formal complaint was received by Secretary Duque's office and what are they supposed to do with this. So fortunately, sabi naman ni Secretary Duque, natanggap namin and what I did is to pass it on the RITM for their proper handling kung ano ba talaga ito. So it was only on behalf of that particular text message that was forwarded to me, kaya ako tinanong kay Secretary Duque because I believe the integrity of our data is so important. Kung gano'n namang kalaki kasi, nakaka-bother kasi amin, let's say 45 out of 49, siguro kung 3 lang o 2, walang masyadong So that is the main reason para lang matukoy natin kung the complaint was received and what has the DOJ was doing with it.
Okay, Congressman Rodante Marcoleta, tumatakbo po bilang senador under the PDP Laban Kusiwing as a guest candidate. Congressman Marcoleta, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Robbie. Maraming salamat, Ami. Until next time.
Apa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll need to take a break. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs here on One News. Now joining us, Professors Ranjit Rai and Guido David of the Octa Research Group. Good evening, Professors.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Ami. Good evening to our televiewers. Good evening.
Right, Professor David, let's start with you, inviting you to, again, let's qualify Tuesday. It's for first time below 5,000 new cases today, 4,400, I believe, or something like that. As we always make sure to qualify, Tuesdays also tend to be the lowest every week. But, notwithstanding that, how do we view and appreciate this number today?
Well, Robbie, it is a low number, and yes, pero we'll still take it. It's the lowest since July 28. And this is 4,200, only 741 cases in NCR. So, although it's a Tuesday, the 7-day average is still decreasing. So our 7-day average in the country is less than 7,000 na lang, so 6,900. And tomorrow is another, fairly low day. So we're expecting somewhere around in the same neighborhood, maybe 4,500 to 5,000 plus cases. So cases are decreasing. The reproduction number is low. Nasa 0.55 na lang sa NCR. Positivity rates going down. It's 9% in NCR. So, and not just in the NCR, it's going down in Calabarzon, in Central Luzon, in Cebu, in Davao, it's going down. There are just a few isolated areas of concern like Zamboanga area and a few others. Pero overall, it's trending downward in the country.
But on the other hand, you saw what happened during the weekend, no, in several areas. Parang nawawala na yung distancing at siyempre parang last year din, di ba, no? And we are allowing minors again, a lot of mobility there. Kahit sabihin pa ng metro mayors na kailangan kasama yung mga adults. Talaga namang nakikita natin, puro bata lang dyan sa kalye. Are you worried that there might be a resurgence of cases? Considering what's happened the entire year?
The possibility, Ami, of resurgence is always there. The possibility that trends will reverse is always there, which is why we remind our citizens, no, that being complacent, being overconfident has no place in the next few months while we're trying to sustain this downward trend. And this is the same for local governments and the national government. The worst thing now is to underestimate this virus and overestimate what we've achieved.
Yeah.
We're still at moderate level now, and we need to sustain this for another 2 weeks to knock us down to low risk. So we're not yet there, and the issue of children is, it's a sensitive issue that we'd like to leave to our healthcare experts, to finally decide on, because we haven't even invited them back to school, and we're opening them, we're inviting them back to the malls. I don't think that it's practical and it's safe at the moment. But then again, that's just my view. In Octa, there's a healthy debate about this. There's a belief that there's an opportunity to increase mobility and expand the economy. So people are suggesting we take that opportunity. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the idea of safe reopening and be mindful of the fact that these trends can reverse very easily.
Yeah, but if they do, if this downward trend starts to slow down, right? Or worse, if it starts to reverse, and as you keep pointing out, and the experts keep pointing out, we'll start seeing the numbers from this implementation to the alert level 3, maybe in another 1.5 weeks. No, so in 1.5 weeks, if we see those numbers bottoming out or possibly even reversing, how should we take those numbers? How do we also not overreact or underreact?
Well, yeah, okay. So, the trend we can still see upticks in cases. There will be spikes in cases, which we will consider to be not a major threat. So we will definitely be looking at all the indicators, and we're confident naman because in the past scenarios when there were spikes in cases, we didn't overreact. We only saw the surge when it actually happened. So there were 3 major surges in NCR, and we saw all those major surges. We did not declare a surge when there was no surge. And that's a fact. So when we were seeing upticks in cases and spikes in cases, we were seeing these.
Yeah, but Professor David, I think that's part of my question. We'll only see a surge when we're already in the middle of it?
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually see it in its early stages, and then we declare that there's a surge. So, but we might see upticks in cases, Robbie. This is possible, and we will be able to distinguish this from an actual surge.
Okay.
So there are factors that make us confident that a major resurgence might not happen. And we're not saying it's not possible, but we're just saying that the chances of that have significantly lessened because of the level of vaccinations that we now have in the country, and the not just the vaccinations, but even the natural immunity. Some people are saying that there's significant natural immunity already because of having gone through 3 waves of variants, And we're not seeing a variant of concern right now, apart from the Delta variant. But that being said, it doesn't mean that we should be complacent, as Professor Ranjan says. We should still be, focused on keeping these cases, reducing these cases down to a very, very low level, so that we could really open up the economy and not being, being complacent and not following health standards may just prolong the surge. Maybe it may not lead to a major resurgence, but it may prolong the surge in the sense that cases will not decrease down to the levels that we want.
Well, in fact, you've said alert level 2 might be possible in November, no? That should make the Go Negosyo group very happy. And we've heard that you partnered with Go Negosyo. What does that mean exactly? And what did you tell Joey Concepcion, for example? Did you also caution him about overconfidence in reopening or rushing to? Is he rushing at all?
No, yes, we inked a relationship, no, with Go Negosyo, but that relationship, as we have expressed, both groups have expressed, will not in any way curtail, no, Okta from expressing its own scientific observations. And in fact, that is what the private sector wants from us, a fair and accurate picture of the situation so that they can make proper decisions and recommendations to government. We've had a very, successful relationship over the last few months. And, the trust between the two organizations is high. And the engagement with the private sector has been very fruitful for Okta because Okta has been a data analytics team by itself, but with the perspective we gain from the private sector, it has further enriched our way of looking at things. And we are not going to be the spokespersons for we assure the public we're not going to be spokespersons for the private sector. We are going to be an independent data analytics team providing data, not just in the private sector, but also accessible to the public.
Well, I'm guessing they asked you if it's possible to have a semblance of a Merry Christmas this year.
Yeah, even before the relationship, we've been saying that for the last 4 weeks. Nobody believed us that it was going to go on a downward. The sad fact is nobody believed us when the surge was happening. When it was still in the early stages, and it did happen. It did cost a lot of lives. It did cost a major impact on livelihoods. And we warned the country about this. And instead of believing us and as messengers, we got shot. No, you don't know what happened. So and then of course a few weeks earlier, we already projected the downward trend. Now the important point here is that the private sector has seen that we make good projections, we do a good job, and that's why they're just formalizing the partnership that we've had over the last few months. And maybe this is just a recognition that in partnership, our voices are louder. We can help each other articulate and amplify our messages.
Yeah, but Professor Rai, if you don't mind, I do want to talk about these relationships that you've built with the national government, with local governments, with the private sector, because Okta research has not been immune to trolls. You've not been immune to criticism. And I think doon ang galing din yung tanong ni Ami, di ba? When you build a relationship, as you said, with Go Negosyo, that's an evolution, di ba? I'd like to know what you've learned also in reflecting where you were before. Na ito, bato lang kami ng bato. Eventually, you'll have to play some. I'll use the word. You'll have to play some politics, I presume. You'll have to learn how to talk to different sectors. What have you learned in the past few weeks or the past couple of months in terms of, not just standing by data, but how to communicate it and how important relationships still are?
In the process of truth seeking and truth telling, you learn a lot. No, and again, there's an ecosystem for communicating science knowledge, and we realized that early on that by ourselves we could not make as much headway as when we have partnerships. And we learned 3 things. In fact, this was my speech, acceptance speech in our MOA signing earlier. And we learned, Okta learned 3 things. Number 1, science matters. And it's part of that winning formula that we saw, no, that when employed and when science is becomes the primary source of information and defines policy, it wins. The best science is telling us testing, tracing, and isolation work, expanding hospital capacity works, vaccination works. And if we follow science, there's a way forward. Another thing that we learned is that citizenship matters. And citizens working together in a collective effort to deal with COVID really works. No? When individuals begin to realize that as citizens, no, what they do is more important than anything government does, we prevail. Third thing we learned is that governance is not about government. It's really about partnerships within the civil society, the private sector, and our communities. Yeah, government and the local governments and the national government play an important role. But when in partnership, we can get things done. And that's what we realized, no? That isolated as we are, we were not as effective when we were able to build consensus. You won't believe this, no? In July, we went to the private sector. We were passionate about the belief that we were in the midst of a very dangerous surge. We talked to them, we convinced them, and that's all we did. They went straight to Malacanang together with the mayors and convinced for the first time our national government to lock down, which is kind of weird because last year they were completely against us, because they weren't accessible to our own data. We always had an antagonistic relationship. But when they began to understand the science of it, and this is where I like the private sector because they're driven by data. And when we began to convince them that this is the best way to save the fourth quarter, we didn't have to go to Malacanang. We didn't even have to recommend. They went straight to Malacanang and asked for a lockdown. And maybe that surprised Malacanang. That's the truth. It surprised government that there was so much consensus around dealing with COVID. And government, in the end, made the right choice. We locked down. Maybe we wanted it a little better, a little harsher, maybe a little earlier. But the reality is, they made the right choice, and it saved lives and livelihoods.
So I'll ask you again: are you seeing some cheer this Christmas?
We're seeing a Merry Christmas, Ami. Honestly, we've been saying it since 2 weeks ago that if vaccinations continue to be ramped up, if people continue to do, if the local governments continue to testing, tracing, and isolation, and if citizens continue to practice the minimum public health standards, we will. It's a mathematical reality, no? We will sustain this trend, and we will have a Merry Christmas.
So the fourth quarter has been saved, huh?
I think so, pretty much, yeah. Guido, what do you think? Like in 2 weeks, will be probably 2 or 3 weeks will be in low risk. We saved the fourth quarter for livelihoods, but we still lost a lot of lives, and that's why we often tell government that these are not statistics; they're real people, and we have to learn from what we have done and continue to do better. And that's where Octa will continue to play some role as a voice of science as far as the pandemic is concerned, and an independent, data analytics provider for the country.
Yeah. Professor David, nothing to qualify there. Wala tayong anything to give you a safety valve here, whether geographically or by sector?
Well, Robbie, I mean, we're optimistic in the general sense. Like I mentioned, we're not seeing a variant that's threatening. Yes, we still have to practice minimum public health standards. Pero, and yes, the search is still ongoing in certain places. Pero the search is pretty much over in many metropolitan areas. In Cebu, it's pretty much over. In Cagayan de Oro, it's been over for a month now. So what we're seeing is that once we are able to manage the Delta variant in a certain region, generally it's pretty much over. Now we might prolong it if we're not careful, if we don't practice minimum public health standards, if we have large congregations of people, no social distancing, etc. That's why we still need to follow the minimum public health standards. We might prolong it, not really maybe causing a major surge like getting to 20,000 cases. Pero and the businesses are they're practicing good pandemic management as well in their respective businesses. Hopefully this will continue. And then once we're down to, I mean, right now we're almost at 1,000 cases per day in Metro Manila, which is a good number for Metro Manila. Our goal is to get it down to something like, if we could get it down to like last year, 400 cases a day in Metro Manila, or even lower, 100 cases per day, because we might have elections coming up next year. It would be ideal if our numbers are very low by the time, campaigns come into full gear, because let's face it, in Malaysia, they had some challenges in their pandemic management because they were also having an election season. Same thing happened in Chile, even though they had sufficient level of vaccination. So these are some things we have to consider, moving forward.
Well, since you mentioned elections already, that's the other thing that's preoccupying the country, of course. And we know that Okta has started dabbling in politics as well. You're into surveys. Are you going to pursue that, the surveys? Because I remember Father Nick saying that he might suggest that you lay off politics for a while and focus on the pandemic. Professor Wright?
Well, that's a big debate in the group. In fact, we have our September survey, the latest survey for the country. We have not released it. Actually, we are still in the process of discussing all of these protocols in Okta about surveys. But we believe surveys are important. Public opinion research is important to the life of the country. It has the information there is an important contribution to our democracy, especially the discussion on the 2022 elections. But we also have studies on COVID-19. In fact, our latest study shows that vaccine willingness is high at 61%. So these are things, no? And that 9 out of 10 Filipinos practice minimum public health standards. No? Of course, the frequency has gone down. Okay, we also have surveys on government response. We will publish all of these survey results, including the analysis of the last 3 national surveys for the president, vice president, and for our senators.
But you will continue the surveys, because you know what happens here when politics is injected into anything. We have a toxic political environment, and they're afraid that it might taint the work of Okta in relation to COVID.
Now we will continue the surveys because they complement our work in the science dealing with COVID. Majority of our own probes are really on COVID-19, and so we will continue the surveys. We will continue providing access to the public as far as our survey results. Everything will continue as it is, as an independent scientific or as an independent research organization. It's our right. It's also our social responsibility as social scientists, to provide that information. The information we provide, whether it's in COVID-19 or the public opinion research, empowers people with information, empowers them so that they can make good decisions as citizens. And that's all that Okta wants.
Yeah.
And that's all that Okta wants to contribute to the discourse.
Hey, Professor Rai, can you give us at least an outline of what's in the September survey?
Okay, well.
Atin natin lang.
Leak the.
It's very similar to the. I can't release the details because we're still working on the PR. It will be released in the next few days. We will provide a probe on the president, vice president, and of course senatorial, elections, for 2022, and then we will provide not just September, but we will provide July and January as a comparative study. So anybody doing a serious study on trends will see it. All our surveys there. So accountability, transparency, and all of that.
Yeah,
Professor
Rai, I mean, I won't deny it. We will be part of the problem for you once you start releasing these surveys. I'll just, I guess, repeat Ami's question. Are you not concerned that once Okta is associated with political surveys as well, that also taints? I mean, even if you say that there's a wall between these different surveys and each survey is proceeding independent of each other, mission and all of that, that's fine. But doesn't that put at risk your surveys and your studies and recommendations and data purely on the COVID side, doesn't that run the risk of getting tainted with, warranted or not warranted people saying, this is politically tainted?
Well, that's par for the course in a sense. It's really up to the group, no? If they feel strongly about the advocacy to do public opinion research. And I believe it's important, an important area of research. And we also believe that the research we undertake complements our COVID research. And whatever data we provide, again, as scientists and social scientists, we provide in a transparent and accountable manner the results. And as scientists would say, the community will validate it. And our own methodologies are rigorous and scientific also. So we can also be judged by that. So we're hoping that the science will flow up and shine, and that all these doubts about Okta, which, by the way, is really completely unfair because these are doubts never cast on Social Weather Station or Pulse Asia, but has often been utilized in the case of Okta.
Yes, but part of there is, and that's actually my second question. In the interest of transparency, what's the business model here? That's going to be the question. In fact, that was the question put to you in Congress. Anyway,
Yeah.
Who's paying for this? Who's paying for the political surveys in particular? And can you be hired to conduct? Can you be hired to do commissioned surveys?
Okay, to answer the first question, just like Pulse Asia and SWS, we use a subscription model. Those subscribers provide bulk of the funds that fund the public opinion research. And there are two sides of the public opinion research. One is the what we provide for the public, and these are standard probes that no one can dictate on, or and there's a second side where you have, for a short period of time, embargoed questions from subscribers. They will be published after a short period of time of embargo. So that means that assures the public that whatever is subscribed to Okta will eventually be provided access to the public. So that ensures a neutrality. That also ensures that no one subscriber will dictate upon Okta research or its national surveys. So remember, the national survey is two parts. So one is our regular public survey, which is accessible to all. Our national survey is accessible, where we do a probe on the elections, COVID, on socioeconomic indicators, and of course, international relations questions. And then there's the part where subscribers who ask sensitive questions, pay for their own questions, and for a short period of time, these questions are embargoed, but eventually we provided access to the public after the embargo.
Just to illustrate how your political surveys might affect your COVID, your pandemic surveys. Halimbawa, because the pandemic response is going to be a major issue in the elections.
It
Paano
is,
po yung mga lumalabas na mga COVID surveys nyo, mga improving yung perception, and all these groups ranged against the administration will say, ay, pinagawa yan ng administrasyon para gumanda yung nila sa voters. I'm just citing this. It's highly possible, Alam niyo naman.
It's very possible. It's true. Yeah, I agree. Ami, that there are people who can misconstrue all of this, But we're not the only ones doing questions on government response. SWS, Pulse Asia does it, and in fact, Okta, the strategy of Okta is really not to do surveys together with Pulse and SWS. We do it the month after. So we're like a validating survey in that sense. So our contribution is to provide information for a longitudinal way of looking at things. So while Pulse and SWS have their own schedule for doing surveys, we do it after. And so you can validate our surveys with what's being produced also by these other survey companies. The important thing is that we do it in a scientific, rigorous manner, and following all accepted methodologies for doing scientific surveys. And again, we're open to validating our methods. We have a team of statisticians, also from UP, as consultants and as researchers. So we have a whole team doing this. And again, all of our work is open to the public.
Okay. Professors Ranjit Rai and Guido David of Octa Research. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie, Amy.
Okay.
Thank you, Ami. Thank you, Robbie.
That's all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, magpabakuna kayo kung pwede na. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and we are One News.